operate in truth, right? Operate in truth. Tell the truth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Gator Truth Florida Football Podcast. I'm Daniel, and on this episode, we're going to take a look at the Gators' trip out to Starkville to take on the Mississippi State Bulldogs. And to be honest, it's going to be interesting. It is an 11 a.m. Central kick, which is the local time in Starkville. And, well, Gators don't do too well at the noon Eastern kickoffs. And then also, the Gators don't quite do well in Starkville. Just a quick history, and for those who did not see my opposing views I did with Landon from the My Dogs Are Barking podcast, we kind of went over this, and that is, 1992, Steve Spurrier takes the Gators into Starkville on Thursday night. We lose that game and then do not play another regular season game during a weekday until 2022 when we face FSU. And of course, last year we kicked off the season on a Thursday at Utah. And so that one was interesting. 2000, again, not a great game. Lose to Mississippi State with actually one of Steve Spurrier's SEC title teams there in 2000. And losing Starkville, I remember that we punted on third down at one point out of frustration. 2004, we end up in Starkville, and what happens? Ron Zook's fired after that loss. Then 2009, if you watch the series Swamp Kings, they actually talk about the 2009 trip to Starkville and how that game had a lot of major friction going on. Florida does win that game by 10 points, 29-19, but still, overall, that game was a struggle, and I would definitely recommend checking out Netflix and Swamp Kings to get kind of more of an insider view on that and the discussion that Brandon Spikes has on that game and Tim Tebow and everyone else. And then, of course, the last trip to Starkville back in 2018, where it's a one-score game, and at the end we basically run, for those of you that play Madden or College Football 25, we basically run an engage 8. What that is you have 8 people rushing the quarterback. I believe it's Donovan Steiner, who is not picked up by the Mississippi State offensive line. So he's a free guy through, gets the tackle on Nick Fitzgerald to seal the win at the end of the game. So not exactly a great place Florida plays, and now a time slot that is not the best time slot for us. And I do believe that 2000 game and that 2004 game, the 2004 game for sure, was one of those early kickoffs. Just a little history for anyone about the Gators trips to Starkville in what many people would consider the modern era of Gators football, starting with Steve Spurrier. And definitely an interesting series for sure. Mississippi State's not good, but then again, the Gators don't look too good either. We're going to talk about offense and defense. I really don't have many keys because I'm not sure what to expect from either us or from Mississippi State, as we've seen both teams look good at times and both teams look absolutely terrible at times. Florida lost 41-17 to Miami week 1. Last week, Mississippi State lost 41-17 to Toledo. Toledo is 3-0 so far and could be setting up for a big-time matchup mid-October with Northern Illinois, who, of course, beat Notre Dame. But that's a different discussion for another time, and that's not to excuse a loss to Toledo by any means, but it is at least something on the radar. And so before we really get into talking whatever the offensive keys for the Gators are, I do want to give a shout out to my friends at Alvarez Lawn Company. And at Alvarez Lawn Company, if you're in the Central Florida area and you've got a yard project you need done, or heck, you just are like, I don't want to mow my grass because it's still 90 degrees outside, give my friends at Alvarez Lawn Company a call. They will give you a free quote if you call or text at 407-490-2617. You can also shoot them an email at alvarezlawncompany@gmail.com. Once again, give our friends Alvarez Lawn Company a call if you are in the Central Florida area at 407-490-2617. And that email address again is alvarezlawncompany@gmail.com. Alvarez Lawn Company, building plans that work for you. And so let's talk about the Gators offense against the Bulldogs defense. We've seen Jekyll and Hyde from this offense. There have been games where we've passed really well. See the Samford game, and there's a lot you could say about the quality of Samford's defense and team in general. And then there's games where we've not passed so well, like Miami. And then even last week, there are times we didn't pass so well against A&M. And then we really haven't run the ball well too much at all. And there's actually a joke, and again, things that I joked around with Landon from My Dogs Are Barking is right now they're giving up over 200 yards a game on the ground. The Bulldogs are. So, of course, Gators, as I say almost every week, you really need to establish the run. And, well, they're giving up so many yards on the ground. The problem is we just played a team in Texas A&M that allowed McNeese State to get 180 yards the week before we faced them. And, well, it didn't end up very good. Now, did it? I believe that is not a performance that we want to repeat at all, because we did not take advantage of the weakness of that Texas A&M defense, running for a team combined 52 yards. And I don't want to dog on the fact that we only ran for 52 yards. However, that's what we did. They were weak there and we didn't take advantage of it. And then part of that is, there are people that put the stats out there. If we are in pistol, we're running the ball 80% of the time. And pistol, for those who may not be familiar, that's when the running back lines up directly behind the quarterback, where if the running back is to the left or right, a little offset, we're passing the ball 60-ish% of the time. So a little bit giving away what we're doing just by formation. And unfortunately, we've not seen much change in that. So defenses know what's coming. This Mississippi State defense, there are games that they've looked good and games where they, haven't. I'm not going to say necessarily they're good, and I shouldn't say it like that. But facing Arizona State, their pass defense was great, held the quarterback to 50% completions. The Arizona State quarterback, and meanwhile, last week against Toledo, not so much, gave up, I believe, 300 yards through the air. Let me go and double check that for you. 285 Toledo threw for. Now, granted, once you're up 41-17, then you can run all day. And they did. I mean, Toledo put up a ton of yards on the ground against the Bulldogs as well. Some of that is just, hey, we're up, so let's keep running. Ran for 169 on the Bulldogs. But they, again, probably weren't running too much early because you're having success passing the ball. They did have their quarterback, Tucker Gleason, completed 23 for 28, which is a very high completion rate. That 23 or 28 was for 285 yards and 3 touchdowns. So definitely something that we could do. Now, I've talked on here before that I am worried about, our passing scheme and that a lot of that is predictable. Now we've got Eugene Wilson out. He announced today, or the day of this recording, he's had surgery, so he will not be participating in this game. And then you've got all the other things. Andy Jean's still not back. There's someone else I know I miss. Oh, Khalil Jackson is out for the season as well. So we are missing quite a bit of our receiving unit. But then we have, and we talked about last game, Texas A&M, only 2 receivers caught balls. Meanwhile, 3 tight ends did. Hopefully that changes this week. This is a defense we can exploit if we need to in that passing game. And if we get the passing game going, and I know I say this every week, but if we get the passing game going, it'll open up room for the running game. However, if we're going to try running until we can get the passing game going, if they play defense as every defense has, for the last 7-8 games where they stack the box and make us beat them through the air, then it's not going to be a good offensive day in Starkville. We've not run really, really well in any of our games, and they've not had a good run defense. So it's pretty bad on bad, but hopefully our run offense takes off. And this week we do take advantage of a maroon and white former SEC West school who can't stop the run. And so if I had to say there were keys, of course, I've talked about running, but same thing. We need to pass to open up the run. And I'm very curious to see how we play our quarterbacks. There hasn't been as much of a big deal made about it. We could see alternating quarterbacks every series, or maybe we see Graham Mertz come in and control the game until he doesn't. I really don't know. And at this point, it's just waiting to see what we do in Starkville. I wish I had a better way of just telling you, here's what's going to happen. But it's been so unpredictable with our offense, and Mississippi State's been so unpredictable with their defense. Like I said, there are games they've given up, less than 100 yards passing. And then last week they give up 285. And then, of course, 45 rushing attempts for Toledo. I am quite sure a good number of those were after they were up, and of course won 41-17. So this is a team we should beat. And before I talk about our unpredictable defense against their unpredictable offense, as we're both 1-2, let me give a shout out to my friends at Gator Chatter. Now, Gator Chatter is a Florida Gator message board. Lots and lots of fun going on there right now. I've seen all sorts of discussions about, what the building project plans can or could be, discussing different possible replacement coaching candidates if Billy Napier's let go. Of course, there's lots of feeling Gator Nation that's in a win, not an if. And so we're going to really see what that means. But definitely lots of good discussion going on from my friends at Gator Chatter, gatorchatter.com, your Florida Gator sports bar. All right, well, let's talk about our unpredictable offense we talked about that. Let's talk about our unpredictable defense, or there's my cat. She knows what's going on. Our unpredictable defense against Mississippi State's unpredictable offense. And to say Florida's defense has been bad, well, it's statistically worse than Mississippi State's defense, and that is for sure. And kind of unfortunate, but hey, what are we going to do at this point? And I know some people are probably wondering why I'm just sitting back and being like, whatever. Well, I mean, if we are in a win, not if, we just got to sit here and take it as it is. But Gators currently giving up 407 yards per game on defense. And just to show you the statistic of it, not that they're much better, but Mississippi State giving up 388. Now, granted, the Gators have played a tougher schedule, facing Miami, Samford, and, well, A&M. And they faced 3-0 Toledo and Arizona State. Granted, that was in Tempe, and Eastern Kentucky, who, again, not that's really tied, but 10 years ago, Will Muschamp ran up the score on that Eastern Kentucky team. And a lot of people called in to Steve Russell after the game saying, maybe we should hang on to him. And it's like, this is a bad FCS school, right? But anyways, that's besides the point. I'm really going crazy here, folks, with my stream of consciousness. So if you like it, great. If you don't, I apologize. But anyways, last week, their defense gives up. We talked about 285 passing and gave up 169 rushing. Now, what did their offense do last week? Well, Blake Shapen, their quarterback, 319 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. And they rushed for 66 yards. Now, granted, there are 18 yards of sacks, or negative 18, sorry. 8 carries for negative 18 for Blake Shapen. I imagine that negative is due to sacks. So they can throw the ball. Even when you go back to the Arizona State game, Blake Shapen again, 268 and 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But in that game, they only ran for 24 yards. The problem is, if they can run the ball, we've got a problem. If they can pass the ball, we've got a problem. The problem is, we've had problems stopping both so far this year. And not that Blake Shapen's going to pull it down and run and be dangerous. Of course, in that Arizona State game, 7 carries for negative 22 yards. So their offensive line is a little bit suspect. But anyways, as my dogs are barking, Landon was saying, in that opposing views, he's not going to beat you with his legs, but there are times he'll pull it down and run. And that kind of reminds me a little bit of Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz, no one's going to confuse him with Tim Tebow running the ball, but we've seen him at times pull down, go get 5, 6, 7 yards in chunks if he's not watched. So it's something for us to keep an eye on. I will say their offense, we talked about 300 yards passing last week, 268 in Tempe, which was a rough game for them. Lots of turnovers, did not help them. And then opening game. Now, granted, this is an opening game where they put up 56 points. Shapen was 15 of 22, 47, 3 TDs. And in that game, he actually had a pretty good game rushing, 7 carries for 44 yards, led the team in rushing. Now, I don't think we see that this week at all. But again, this is a passing offense that through 3 games is averaging over 250 yards passing, where Florida is definitely averaging more. However, that is shaped heavily by DJ Lagway's performance against Samford. So we'll see. I don't know what defense is going to show up. Hopefully it's the defense that we saw that was a little more disciplined against Samford, and not the defense we see that'll get weird personal fouls, that we saw against Miami, or just totally blow coverages like we saw against A&M. It doesn't help that we've lost, Joey Slackman, who had meniscus surgery. It was, again, just like Trey Wilson announced today as this is being recorded. And since we already lost, another interior lineman, and we lost Michael, I'm not going to pronounce that last name well, but it's like Boro, true freshman. So we're losing interior defensive linemen, and that's not good, because that means you're going to have guys playing out of position, or guys like Des Watson playing a lot more snaps when really they should not be. And that's not going to help our run defense, losing that depth. whether you believe those were, quality depth or not, the more players, the merrier, because you have that rotation and at least guys are staying fresh. The last thing you want as the Gators is if this Jeff Lebby offense takes off, and Jeff Lebby, make no mistake, is a brilliant offensive minded guy. You don't want your defensive linemen staying in there lots of snaps to get tired, especially if they get the run or pass game going. And also talking about the blown coverages, you've got, now Asa Turner's out, and it sounds like we may be missing at least one more safety as it's escaping me. And again, things that are not good to see. You never want to see those, and especially not on a defense that has been suspect at best. This is a game that I think the Gators, can win. This is a game I could also see the Gators losing because both teams are so unpredictable. But in a way, that's what makes college football exciting is, any given Saturday, Billy Napier has only won 2 games away from the swamp as a head coach. This could set up to be his 1 win away that he seems to be averaging per season. I could see this game going very much like South Carolina last year, where it was 2 teams with bad defenses that ended up putting up a ton of points, and it was a thrilling game, and we came out with the win. This could be a game where, hey, both defenses show up because Florida decides to be extra predictable and conservative on offense on the road, and Mississippi State is having the same issues they had against Arizona State, where they couldn't really move the ball, at least in the first half, and that was not a pretty first half at all, if I remember right. I think they scored 3 points going into the half. Give me 1 second. I'll pull that up for you guys. Of course, I want to give you the best information. And of course, at the half of that game, it was 27-3 in the second half. Mississippi State comes back, scores touchdowns on 3 of their 4 drives after the half. Unfortunately, they allowed Arizona State to run out the remaining 5.5 minutes on the clock after that. But so this is an offense for the Bulldogs that isn't good at all. And this is the defense for the Gators that honestly has been probably, of the bad defenses we've seen at Florida since 2020, probably the worst. I can't tell you what Ron Roberts has done to make this go down. Again, I was high on this defense. Well, high being relative. I was a lot higher on this defense before the season because you think all those true freshmen that played last year, all the young guys, like even guys who play as true sophomores like Shamar James, now they're going to be this much seasoned. They're going to be this much better. And then meanwhile, in Gator Nation Football Podcast has a great breakdown of this. It's a crucial 3rd and 1 coming out of a 2-minute timeout. And we only have 5 guys on the line. We have 4 linebackers 3 yards deep and 2 deep safeties. Meanwhile, they're basically in a goal line formation where it's 8 men on the line, then the quarterback in an I formation. I don't know what we're doing by giving that up, and hopefully someone figures it out. And I said this on Twitter. I say this now, and I think I said it in the last episode. I have no idea. I wish on Monday, as long as Billy's staying, he would have said, you know what? I'm going to try something new to try and get a win. And maybe we see this. Maybe we don't. Who knows? Like, I'm going to give up full play calling duties to Callaway. I'll give the defensive play calling back to Austin Armstrong just to try something. If it works, great. If it doesn't, at least we tried something and not continuing to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. With that said, even though Florida's been blown out 2 of their 3 games, at least they haven't been blown out by a lower team opponent, lower group opponent. So I will say that Toledo game at home last week weighs heavy on the minds of those in Starkville. And what's funny is both fan bases can't believe the other thinks they're going to lose this game, talking to some Gator fans. But I think the Gators pull this out because with that mentality going on in Mississippi State right now, well, I don't think this game gets sold out or as rowdy as it could be on the road. Teams back against the wall. I think somehow the Gators will pull this off in some funky manner. I sure hope so, because it's my first trip to Davis Wade Stadium. I really hope. But I also think that neither of these defenses are going to make stops. Of course, I'm going to say that, and somehow this game ends up being like Auburn-Mississippi State back in the 2000s, 3-2. But I think this is actually going to be more akin to South Carolina, that type of game. I'm going to go Gators 35-31. Somehow we force them to kick a field goal, and so they have 5 scoring drives. We have 5 scoring drives. We just hold them to a field goal on 1, and that's the difference. Hopefully it works out. Either way, we're here to support the Gators and these players. We'll see what happens with the coaching as the season goes on. But after this, we have our first bye week of the season. Get ready for UCF. But for this week, it is the Bulldogs. And I do think this could be an exciting game because both teams are as unpredictable as any two teams could be. And I say that as our offense might be the most predictable offense that many people have seen for a long time. But with that said, if you've enjoyed this episode, leave a comment, like, subscribe if you have not. And, thank you for listening this long. I know this has been a different kind of episode, but I've said it probably 100 times now. I don't know what to expect from either of these teams because they've been up and down. But with that said, interesting time to be a Gator for sure. And so thank you all for listening. And as always, go Gators. Or